I've always been a pretty chill traveler. I'm not picky about where I stay, as long as it's cheap and has decent reviews. So when I found a private room listed for just $35 a night in a small town I was passing through, I booked it without hesitation. The listing said it was a cozy room in an older home with a private entrance and access to the kitchen. The host, named Carl, had nearly perfect ratings. Quiet, respectful. Barely saw him, one review said. That's all I wanted. A quiet night, some rest, and back on the road. I arrived just before sunset. The house was older than the pictures let on. It had that sagging front porch with wooden steps that creaked under your weight. There was no porch light, just the amber glow of the setting sun casting shadows through the trees. Carl greeted me at the front door. He was in his mid-60s, bald, with deep crow's feet around his eyes and a voice that sounded like gravel. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "You the guest, huh?" he said. "Yep, one night," I replied, smiling politely. He nodded and opened the door wider. "Come on in. Room's upstairs, just down the hall." I stepped in. The house smelled faintly of mothballs and damp wood. The furniture was old-fashioned, like something out of the 70s. Brown plaid couches, floral wallpaper, and a giant grandfather clock ticking loudly in the hallway. He led me upstairs and pointed to a door at the end. "That's you," he said. "Bathroom's across the hall. I'll be downstairs. I don't go out much after dark." I thanked him, went inside, and shut the door. The room was fine, clean enough. A bit stuffy, like it hadn't been used in weeks, but there were fresh sheets on the bed and a small lamp on the nightstand. I set my bag down, opened the window for some air, and flopped onto the bed with a tired sigh. That's when I noticed the door didn't lock. It had a knob, but no deadbolt. No key. Nothing. I frowned but told myself it wasn't a big deal. It's a small town. The guy had great reviews. I was just being paranoid. Still, I jammed a chair under the doorknob before I went to bed. It was around 2:30 in the morning when I woke up. I didn't know why at first. There hadn't been a loud noise. No dream I could remember. Just something off. Then I realized what it was. I could hear breathing. Not mine. It was faint, coming from the hallway. I sat up slowly. The room was dark, just a sliver of moonlight coming through the window. I held my breath and listened. Inhale. Exhale. Steady. Calm. Too calm. I tiptoed to the door and pressed my ear against it. The breathing stopped. I waited. Nothing. After a few minutes, I convinced myself it must have been the old house making noises. Or maybe Carl walking to the bathroom. I went back to bed, but didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, wide awake, until dawn. By morning, everything seemed normal again. I went downstairs hoping to find Carl, maybe say goodbye, and head out early. But he wasn't in the living room. Or the kitchen. His car was still in the driveway. I called out, "Carl." Nothing. The house was eerily quiet. I texted him through the app, just in case he'd gone out on foot or something. Then I went to the kitchen to grab a glass of water before hitting the road. That's when I noticed something that made my skin crawl. On the counter were 2 used coffee cups, both half full. There were 2 plates in the sink. One had eggs. The other had toast crusts. I'd heard no movement all night. No footsteps. No creaking stairs, and yet someone else had clearly been up, eating, drinking coffee, or they'd never gone to bed at all. I suddenly felt this cold, sinking feeling in my gut. I grabbed my bag and made for the stairs. Halfway up, I noticed something that stopped me cold. The door to the room next to mine, the one Carl never mentioned, was slightly open. I hadn't noticed it the night before. I looked in. The room was dark, but I could see an old recliner in the corner, facing the hallway. There was a small side table next to it. On the table was an empty cup and a camera. It was mounted on a tiny tripod, pointing straight toward my room. I didn't go in. I couldn't. I turned, walked out the front door, and didn't look back. When I got in my car, I finally got a reply from Carl. "Hope you had a restful night. Sorry I wasn't around this morning. Feel free to check yourself out." That was it. I drove off and reported the listing immediately. It was taken down within a few hours. I don't know who was breathing outside my door that night. I don't know why Carl didn't mention the other room. And I don't know if I was being watched the entire time. All I know is something was very wrong in that house. And I'm never renting a private room again.